Hi everybody, it's Tara from Sojourn, and I am here with Stephanie Parent-Chandler, who is one of our registered psychologists. She has a lot of little vlogs and things that she's done, which is on our YouTube page and on our website vlog as well, if you want to see more from her. But something I thought would be interesting to hear Stephanie talk more about is this guy, Daniel Siegel. Everybody's talking about Daniel Siegel, and we're talking about his work, how he's talking about the brain. And right now, a really interesting thing for families going through stress is this topic of co-regulation.
Absolutely. So if anybody is interested, just search Dan Siegel and you can search hand model of the brain. Search that on YouTube. And well, after you watch this, of course, but search that on YouTube because he does a really good job of exploring and helping us and us as parents understand what is happening for our brains as well as for our children's brains, whether that be our young children or our adolescent or teenage children, when we are struggling to regulate our emotions. Okay, so I'll go over the hand model of the brain with you just so you guys know, because it is a fairly simple and yet I guess like complicated concept if you really want to look at all the neurobiology and that sort of stuff. But he basically does this. So if you think about down here, if you kind of look at the hand, and hopefully you can see my hand there, and you have kind of like your wrist, right? That's kind of like the very bottom of your brain back here. And this part of the brain is the part of the brain that deals with all the automatic stuff. So this is the stuff like breathing. This is the stuff like your heart beating, your reflexes, right? With the blinking and that kind of stuff. And so this part of the brain is always just acting to kind of maintain like homeostasis for us, okay? So that's way at the brain stem and the base of our brain. And then this part of the brain, if you were to put your thumb kind of across your palm there, this part of your brain signifies your emotion centers of your brain, okay? So this part of the brain in here, this is where our emotions live. This is where maybe people might say is like that reactive part of our brain. This is where, you know, emotions like anger, frustration, sadness, even our happiness and our excitement, our curiosity, that's where they all kind of live in here. And you might even think about it as like our downstairs brain. So this is kind of our downstairs brain. And this is something that develops very early on for us. And then on the top, if we wrap our hand around like this is like our upstairs brain stuff. And if you're thinking about your head, it's like your cortex, your cerebral cortex, or like really specifically our prefrontal cortex, if you really want to get all lingo-y and psychology lingo-y stuff. It's like your prefrontal cortex. Now what happens is as this part develops, which by the way, this part doesn't develop, it's probably the last thing that develops in our brain. Our brain develops from the bottom up and from the back front, okay? So this is like the last part that develops, and often we actually know that this part of the brain develops up into about age 24, 25, and sometimes older for some people. That's just what we know. But this part of the brain, it's our higher order functioning. So this is stuff like remembering, organization, critical thinking and analyzing skills, emotional regulation, which is like what we've all been talking about during this time, things like memory function. So there's a lot of pieces in here that this part does. This is also very responsible for things like learning. So this is our brain, right? We walk around, and this cortex part is kind of the upstairs and kind of keeps our emotions, which are in here, just in check, right? But in times of stress, which can happen for every single one of us, what often can happen is this part of the emotion center of our brain gets so activated that we flip our lid. And Dan Siegel talks a lot about flipping our lid. And so if you notice, what's just happened is that all this stuff up here, which is about critical thinking, analyzing our options, sorting through things in an organized way, planning and making responses that are appropriate for the situation, emotional regulation, they are not online. And what's taking over is our emotions in that moment. And so we say things that we don't mean afterward when we calm down. We do things and react in ways that maybe we wouldn't react in when we're feeling a bit more calm and regulated. And so that's where we end up kind of coming from this emotionally driven place. So you might be sitting here going, okay, well, that's great. What do we do about it? Well, we know that emotions are like a wave, and eventually they will kind of calm down by themselves and the brain will come back online. But what we actually need to do, and this is part of this regulation and co-regulation piece, is we need to soothe ourselves. We need to soothe ourselves so that our brain can come back online and our emotions can be regulated. So different ways of soothing. So for example, if you're working with a young child, right, preschool up to age 5 or 6 maybe, it's not going to be a lot of talking, right? Because talking is up here, guys, right? And right now that's not what's online. Instead, it's going to be things like rocking back and forth, maybe these rhythmic motions of rocking and holding. Maybe it's singing a song, maybe it's rubbing a back, maybe it's getting their favorite blankie, or for my little one, it's her silly monkey and wrapping it around her and having her that with her, because it's about soothing and bringing our emotions down to a more manageable level. And we need to do that with our kids because they don't actually have those skills yet. We teach them that. When I was in one of our circle security training, which is another really great resource, if you're looking for a parenting approach that's about attachment and about relationship, what an amazing resource. And the trainer that was there that day, she mentioned how if you see a regulated adult, you can bet that they were a co-regulated child. And that has stuck with me so much about our role of being able to regulate our children and bring them down. Now for teenagers or for youth, they might not, I mean, I don't know, maybe some 13 to 15 to 17-year-olds want to be rocked back and forth. They might really love that. And sometimes they might not really like that. So maybe it's about sitting beside them and just being with them in their emotion, not trying to talk them out of it, not trying to give them solutions, not trying to convince them of other ideas to think about, because that part of the brain is not online, right? They just need to be connected with and sat with and maybe just soothed, right? Maybe there's certain music that they really like. Maybe there's a way for them to get their body, maybe they need to go for a walk and do some heavy work type of activity to get their body regulated. There's lots of different ways to soothe our system, but just think about that hand model of the brain that Dan Siegel talks about, where if you're trying to do the higher order functioning to calm somebody, it ain't gonna work when the emotions are in charge in that way.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. So we'll stop it there for now and we'll see you
Absolutely.
again next time.